Hi, it's Sherry Pearl. She was always the backup, until that train ride. Hi, Sherry. Let me start with this. I am not the jump on a night train with a stranger girl. I'm the colour-coded calendar, always carry tissues in my bag, recheck the stove twice girl, the one who answers group chats with just an emoji because she's too tired to type a full sentence. And yet this story happens on a night train, with a stranger, in a tiny compartment where the world shrank to 2 bunks, a window, and the sound of the rails. Because that was the night I decided I was done with waiting to be chosen. I'm 39, divorced for 3 years. The kind of divorced where everyone says, you're better off, and now you can focus on yourself, while you eat dinner over the sink and stare at the same 3 Netflix categories every evening. For my birthday, my sister gave me something I absolutely did not ask for. A single ticket for an overnight train to the sea. Go, she said. Read a book, stare out the window, cry in peace if you have to. Just get out of your own apartment. So I booked a tiny sleeper compartment. 1 bunk, 1 human. Me. Romantic in theory, pathetic in practice, if you ask the voice in my head. At the station, I already wanted to go home. The platform lights were too bright, my bag too heavy, my jeans suddenly too tight. Couples were taking cute selfies with their backpacks, teenagers were buzzing around in little packs, and there I was with my sensible suitcase and my sensible shoes, trying not to look like someone who has cried over spreadsheets. The train rolled in with that deep metallic sound and a breath of colder air from somewhere far away. I found my carriage, hauled my suitcase up, and immediately got stuck in the narrow corridor behind a man trying to wedge his backpack into the overhead rack. Sorry, 2 seconds, he said, looking back at me with an apologetic half smile. Dark hair, a bit of grey at the temples. Stubble, hoodie, t-shirt, jeans. That slightly rumpled look of someone who either just woke up or has a brain that lives in 4 time zones at once. It's fine, I said, giving the polite, tight smile we give strangers. He shoved his backpack into place with a grunt, then flattened himself against the wall so I could pass. We did that awkward dance you do in small spaces, both stepping the same way, laughing under our breath. He smelled like coffee and cold air. My body noticed before my brain did. My compartment was what the website promised. Cozy, which is code for if you exhale too hard, you'll fog up all available surfaces. But it was mine. Little sink, bunk bed folded up, a narrow window with a blind. I threw my bag on the seat and sat down, feeling stupidly proud of myself for just being here. Alone, not cancelling. I was still arranging my book and my water bottle in a straight line on the little shelf, because of course I was, when there was a knock at the door. I opened it to find hoodie backpack guy from the corridor, holding a ticket and looking apologetic again. Hi, sorry, he said. I think the system hates us. I'm also in 23B. He showed me his ticket. I looked at mine. Same number. No, this is a single compartment, I said, already feeling my shoulders tense. I paid extra for... He raised his hands. Hey, I'm not arguing. I like not sharing a toothbrush cup with strangers. We both laughed nervously. A few minutes later, the conductor confirmed the glorious truth. The train was overbooked. Some compartments that used to be singles were now flexible. Mixed? I asked, my voice a bit higher than usual. Yes, but only if both passengers agree, the conductor said. If you're uncomfortable, I'll try to move one of you. Might take a while. I should have said no. Old me, last month me, would have. But I looked at the man in the corridor, resting his shoulder against the doorframe. He wasn't leering, he wasn't pushing. He just held up his ticket and gave me a little shrug like, up to you. And something in me, something very small and very tired, snapped and then loosened. I'm okay with it, I heard myself say. His eyebrows lifted a fraction, surprised. So am I, he added quickly. I promise I snore less than an average engine. The conductor nodded, scribbled something, and left us with 2 keycards and a tiny, shared universe. "Hi, I'm the accidental roommate," he said, stepping inside and offering his hand. "Liam." I shook it. His palm was warm, his grip firm but not crushing. I noticed the little crescent of a scar on his wrist. "I'm Nina," I said, "the control freak who paid extra for this cupboard." He laughed properly this time. "Nice to meet you, control freak Nina. I brought snacks?" He lifted a paper bag, chocolate, crisps, a ridiculous pack of gummy bears. "I panic bought at the kiosk," he explained. "I thought I'd be alone with my shame." That made me snort. I liked him immediately. We settled into the space the way strangers do when they accidentally share a lift, too polite, too aware of each other. He took the top bunk, I took the bottom. We negotiated suitcase positions like it was a NATO summit. By the time the train started moving, we were both sitting on the lower bunk, knees almost touching, pretending not to notice how close that actually is when the room is the size of a bathroom. The city lights began to slide past the window. The rails hummed. We chatted about nothing at first, where we were going. Him, also the sea, work conference. Me, birthday escape. How terrible the coffee was in the station. How weird it is to sleep in a moving box. He talked with his hands a lot, like he was drawing little shapes in the air between us. Every now and then his knee bumped mine when the train jolted. He'd say, "Sorry," but neither of us moved away. At some point he asked, "So, birthday escape from what exactly?" And because it was dark outside and the world had narrowed to the little circle of light in our compartment, I just told him. "From being the responsible one," I said. "From answering emails at 11 p.m. From being the person who remembers everyone else's birthdays. From waiting for someone to look at me and go, 'You. I pick you.'" He watched me with that quiet attention some men have when they're actually listening, not just waiting to talk. "So, you're usually the chooser or the chosen?" he asked. "I'm usually the standby option," I said, and felt a laugh bubble up that wasn't funny at all. The safe backup, the person men come to after they've had their fun with someone more exciting. Even saying it out loud made my cheeks burn. But Liam didn't rush to disagree. He didn't fix me with words. He just tilted his head a little and said, "That sounds exhausting." "It is exhausting," I said, and for a second my eyes stung. So I took a train. To where? "To anywhere that isn't my usual life," I said. "I guess to the version of me who does something stupid and doesn't need anyone's permission." He smiled slowly. "Well," he said, "sharing a cupboard with a stranger on your birthday is a decent start." We drifted into other topics in that easy way you sometimes do with strangers. We touched on dating apps, on how everyone seems busy but still lonely, on what it's like to be the reliable one. Nothing long, no monologues, just little bursts of honesty between the clatter of the rails. And with every small confession, something in my chest unclenched another millimetre. At one point, the carriage rocked harder over a junction, and I was thrown slightly sideways. My shoulder bumped his chest. His hand landed on my knee to steady us both. We froze. It wasn't a big, dramatic touch, just his palm spread over the rough denim of my jeans, the weight of him warm and solid. My heart did the thing. You know, the thing where it forgets it's a pump and becomes a drum instead. "Sorry," he said, but he didn't move his hand immediately. I watched his fingers for a second. The little white scar on his wrist, the trail of veins along the back of his hand. I had a choice. Pull away and make a joke, or don't, so I didn't. "It's okay," I said, my voice a little lower than before. "The train is doing most of the work anyway." He glanced up at me, searching my face for something. I let him find it. Slowly, deliberately, he lifted his hand, only to lay it back down a tiny bit higher, thumb resting along the inside of my thigh. Not high enough to be rude, just high enough to make my breathing shallow. "Tell me if this is too much," he said. That sentence, those exact words, did more for me than any compliment in the last 5 years. "It's not," I said. "Not yet." I leaned back against the wall, letting my body feel things before my head dissected them. The sway of the train, the faint vibration through the bunk, the weight of his hand, the warmth that slowly began to spread in my chest and then lower, as if my body was being reminded it exists. He didn't rush. He didn't slide his hand anywhere new. He just stayed there, thumb moving in the smallest arc, back and forth, like he was soothing a cat he'd just met. "Nobody touches me like this," I blurted out, and then wanted to swallow the words back whole. "Like what?" he asked quietly. "Like they're not trying to get anywhere," I said. "Just being here." He looked at me for a long beat. "Okay," he said softly. "Then let's not be in a hurry to get anywhere." My eyes prickled again, which was ridiculous, because there I was in a bunk bed with a hot stranger, and instead of focusing on his jawline, I was on the verge of tears. "Hey," he said gently, "you okay?" "I'm fine," I whispered. "I'm just not used to being the point of the evening. Usually I'm the warm-up act before someone else." He didn't say, "That's not true." He just shifted a little closer, knees bumping mine again, and with his free hand he reached up and tucked a strand of hair behind my ear. "Tonight," he said, voice almost a growl now. "There is nowhere else I'd rather be than in this ridiculously small box. With you." The way he said "you" hit me harder than any "you're beautiful" ever has. I don't remember who leaned in first. I just know that one moment we were two tired adults on a cheap mattress, and the next his mouth was on mine and the train might as well have lifted off the tracks. It wasn't a smooth, cinematic kiss. It was a little clumsy at first. He tasted like mint gum and chocolate and something warm that was just him. His stubble grazed my skin. My nose bumped his. We both laughed into it, and then the laughter melted into something else, deeper, hungrier. He kissed like he was paying attention, not devouring, exploring, committing my mouth to memory. My hand slid up the front of his hoodie of its own accord, fingers curling into the fabric at his chest. His hand on my thigh squeezed just a fraction harder, and I felt heat flash through me like someone had lit a match in my belly. When he finally pulled back, we were both breathing like we'd run for the train. "You're allowed to change your mind at any point," he said, forehead resting against mine. "Even 5 seconds from now." "Are you always this soothing?" I asked, a little breathless. He grinned. "Only when accidentally locked in with emotionally complex strangers." We talked some more after that, in that soft, messy way people talk when there is already a yes humming between their bodies, and they're just deciding what shape that yes will have. We didn't map out rules. We didn't label it. We just agreed on this. Tonight, I wasn't a backup. I wasn't maybe someday. I was the main event. At some point, the train rocked over another junction and the lights flickered, and I felt a sudden wave of panic. Old reflex. "What if this is stupid?" I blurted. "What, kissing on trains?" he said. "It's a little cliché, sure." "No, I mean, what if I regret this in the morning?" He considered that, eyes kind. "Then we stop now," he said. "And we remember it as the night you almost did something stupid but chose yourself instead. That's still a good story." I stared at him. "Or," he added softly, "we keep going, and you remember it as the night you chose yourself and let someone else worship you for a while." Worship is a big word, I said, trying for a joke, but my voice shook. He held my gaze. I'm a big man in a tiny room, he said. I have to do something with all this intensity. I laughed, but my body had already made the decision. I want to keep going, I said. On one condition. Name it. I'm not pretending this is the beginning of some fairy tale, I said. No promises, no, I'll text you every day. I don't have space for another future disappointment. I just want to be fully chosen for one whole night. He nodded, slow and serious. I can do that, he said. One whole night where you are the center of the universe, no subscription required. What happened after that is ours. I can tell you his hoodie ended up somewhere on the floor and my shirt got very intimately acquainted with the little hook on the wall. I can tell you there was a point where the train swayed and we swayed with it, laughing into each other's mouths like teenagers, except our bodies knew so much more about what they liked. I can tell you that he kept checking in, with words, with eyes, with the gentlest, "This okay," murmured against my skin, and every time I said yes, I meant it with my whole, humming body. But I won't give you a play-by-play, not because of YouTube. Because some things feel too sacred to sketch in public. What I will tell you is this. For the first time in years, I wasn't thinking about how I looked from the outside. I wasn't sucking in my stomach, worrying about the angle of my thighs, editing my sounds. I was there, inside my own skin, moaning when something felt good, saying slower or more, please, without apology. Letting my body be the loudest part of me. At one point, when everything was softer and slower, he whispered, "God, you have no idea how easy you are to want. Not easy to love, not easy to be with. Easy to want. Like desire wasn't something I had to earn by being convenient and low maintenance." I could have cried again. Instead, I kissed him until the thought dissolved into the rhythm of the train and the rhythm of us. I woke up before sunrise, curled against him on the lower bunk, his arm heavy around my waist, my leg thrown over his like we'd been doing this for years. The world outside the window was that soft pre-dawn grey, fields and little houses sliding past like sleepy ghosts. For a full minute I considered panicking. Instead, I lay there and listened to his breathing. Inside my chest there was a strange, quiet feeling. Not fireworks, not drama, just peace. My body ached in that satisfied, used way, like muscles after a good stretch. My brain, the one that usually wakes me at 3 a.m. to remind me of embarrassing things from 2009, was silent. I slipped carefully out of his arms and sat up, wrapping the thin blanket around my shoulders. He stirred, blinked at me, then smiled, slow and sleepy. "Hey," he said, voice rough, happy almost see. I laughed. "Hey," I replied. Happy, whatever this was. He shifted to sit beside me, our thighs touching under the blanket. "For what it's worth," he said, looking out at the sliding horizon, "I'm really glad the system messed up our tickets." "Me too," I admitted. We didn't exchange dramatic promises. We did swap numbers, casually, like two adults who know life is messy and people get busy and sometimes the magic stays on the train. Before we got off, he stopped me in the corridor. People were bumping past with suitcases, the train hissing and clicking. "Nina?" he said. "Yeah?" "If your brain tries to rewrite last night as something stupid or reckless later," he said, "please remember this. You didn't wait to be picked. You picked yourself. I was just lucky enough to be invited." I looked at him, all of him, the rumpled hoodie, the tired eyes, the scar on his wrist. "Thank you," I said, and meant it in about 6 different ways. Then we stepped off the train and into our separate mornings. Sherry. I know some people will hear this and think, So you're proud of a one-night stand? Number. I'm proud of this, that for once I didn't sit on the sidelines of my own life, waiting for a man to put a gold star on my forehead and say I was worth choosing. I chose the risk, I chose the pleasure. I chose to let my body be more than a vehicle for responsibilities. And yes, sometimes when my apartment feels extra quiet and my bed is too big and the glow of my laptop is the only light on my face, I think about that night, about the sound of the rails, his hand resting warm and steady on my thigh, the way he said, "You're allowed to change your mind," and meant it. That's what I want the women listening to hear. Not go sleep with strangers on trains, but this, you are allowed to be the main event. You are allowed to want things, kisses, hands, warmth, mess, without a wedding invitation attached. You are allowed to pick yourself first and let someone else meet you there, instead of waiting in the corner hoping to be chosen. Sometimes passion is not a grand romance with a soundtrack. Sometimes it's just one night in a tiny room where you finally stop apologizing for taking up space in your own life. Sending you love from that rattling night train, Nina. 39, former backup plan, now choosing herself first. Maybe you've spent years being the reliable one, the sensible one, the woman who gets picked last. Or not at all. If this letter stirred something in you, let it be this. You're allowed to be the main event in your own life, not just the warm-up act. When you're ready to share the night you finally chose yourself, you know where to find me. I'm Sherry Pearl. This is Dust of Passion Stories. Hit subscribe so you're here for the next letter that might be the nudge you've been waiting for.